What's going on, guys? In this video I want to talk about something that has I've seen a lot recently, and I didn't see it a lot before. Through all the years I've been grappling, I've just seen this come up way more. I mean, there's t-shirts and everything, but it's just not something that I used to hear back when I first started. And what that is this thing called old man Jiu Jitsu. What exactly is old man Jiu Jitsu? Well, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's old men doing Jiu Jitsu. My name is Rad. I'm a Brazilian Jiu Jitsu black belt, and I own Rad Muay Thai and Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. Now, this has been something I've been seeing over the last couple of years, but like I said, when I first was coming up in BJJ, you didn't really see that, and trust me, there were old men doing Jiu Jitsu back then. I just think it wasn't like a gimmicky thing or something, and I don't see it as a gimmicky thing. But I think as Jiu Jitsu has grown so much over the years, globally, there's just obviously, just by the numbers, more older men doing Jiu Jitsu. And just like there's groups for the young guys and the different belt ranks, there was obviously going to be a group that splintered off that had questions regarding old men doing Jiu Jitsu. It never crossed my mind to do a video about it, especially since I consider myself to be in that category. But when I watched a recent professional BJJ match between Shinya Aoki and Cade Rutolo, I watched that match and it really reminded me, or brought to the forefront of my mind, what I consider to be old man jiu-jitsu and how an older man would do jiu-jitsu. So it gave me an idea to just do a video about it. Obviously, like any form of jiu-jitsu, any style of jiu-jitsu, any school that teaches jiu-jitsu, there are different opinions as to what is the best way to roll given your age. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about age. What exactly is considered old? I joke with my students all the time. I tell them that I'm old. For me, I consider myself old in comparison to my students because I am more than twice their age. I don't care what math you're using or how you view it. I consider me to be old in comparison to my young students. But some people may look at it like I'm middle-aged, I'm in my 40s. Some people may look at it differently and say, no, I don't consider you to be doing old man jiu-jitsu until you're in your 50s or 60s. That's up for debate, guys. The way I see it, if you're in your 40s, if you're at midlife and beyond, you're an older man doing jiu-jitsu against all these young whippersnappers. The Gracies initially addressed this a while back. They have a philosophy or a mindset that they call the Boyd system, or the Boyd belt system. This is what they use to explain older people doing jiu-jitsu. The story goes, they had a black belt in his 60s, and he was talking to the Gracies about how he was just getting manhandled by these young bloods on the mat, and it was really getting to him a little bit. And we know, we've been through the journey, or we're on the journey, we know how that mental stuff can really start to build in the back of your mind or the front of your mind. So the way that they decided to go about explaining it, obviously the man's name was Boyd, so we have the Boyd belt system. The way they chose to explain it was that depending on your age, for every 10 years younger your opponent is, you take a belt rank away. So this man being 60 as a black belt, if he was going against a 20-year-old, you would take 4 ranks away from him. So ultimately he would be a blue belt rolling against a 20-year-old white belt. Now, me personally, I feel like that's an oversimplification. I don't see it that way, but I understand what they're saying, and I think it is a way to kind of set older grapplers, set their mind at ease a bit. But I don't believe that. I roll with people who are 25 years younger than me. I wouldn't say that when I roll with them that I'm rolling like a purple belt. Believe me, I roll like a black belt. I'm saying that now because I'm not in my 60s. Things will change. It's not a horrible philosophy. I think it's good. I think it's a decent explanation. But I fear the degree of acceptance that it could create. But it is one way of looking at being an older practitioner of Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. So how do I see old man Jiu Jitsu? Like, what would be the best way to grapple as an older man? Now, obviously, I'm midlife. I'm not in my 50s or 60s, and I know that things are going to get harder for me as the decades roll on. Right now, I feel the difference from when I was in my 30s and in my mid-40s. I feel it, but I don't show signs of it yet. That's my own personal assessment of my rolling. Now, trust me, man, when I go with these young bloods on the mat, I feel the difference. I feel their energy. I feel their athleticism. I feel their power and their strength. And of course, me being older, I know when they're trying to put it on me. Not trying to hurt me, but they're trying to use those things to fill the gaps in their jiu-jitsu against a higher rank. So they figure they could be faster than me and stronger than me or more aggressive than me. And they just might be all of those things. At this age, what I'm feeling is that I definitely am not as proactive as I used to be as far as on the attack at first, where when I was younger, you'd better believe I would meet you like this. And I still am able to do that. I definitely don't just flop. But I'll tell you, 90% of the time, I'm probably starting in a seated guard position. But I've been doing that for years. To me, that position, I do that depending on the person that I'm about to go up against, depending on their aggression or how they roll. I remember when I was training with George Gurgel, he saw how I rolled and he specifically said, like, do not start in a deficit. Like, don't start in a seated position, make them earn that space. And I respect that and I understand it. So sometimes I do make people do that, but more often than not, I'm pretty much starting in a seated guard position. And that goes into my whole mindset about how I see rolling as an older man or old man jiu-jitsu. I see old man jiu-jitsu as more of a defensive type of grappling. I see it as accepting the energy from the younger people as they're putting their strength and speed and athleticism onto you, is absorbing it and moving it however I want. Now, it could be argued that that's jiu-jitsu as a whole, but anyone who does jiu-jitsu knows there's an aggression there. There is an attacking forward aggression in jiu-jitsu when you are able to do those things. But when you're older, you need to go back to the old, jiu-jitsu, the gentle way. You could go back to the core of jiu-jitsu, almost like, again, jiu-jitsu is the smaller guy being able to fight the bigger guy. That's where you end up kind of being. Not that you're actually physically smaller, but you are smaller as far as their advantages against your advantages as you have aged. So you have to roll smarter. You have to absorb what they're giving you and manipulate it, move it. Instead of trying to move them, sometimes you got to move you. Now, trust me, man, in the acceptance, in the rolls, as I'm taking their energy, you're going to have to find strength. You're going to have to find those explosive moments. Those just don't go away. This isn't like no-touch kung fu or martial arts that you see where like I'm at a stage that I can just whip people around with my mind. So you're going to have to get physical. But it's a difference of finding those gotcha moments or catching people, or not even catching them, just moving them into these moments and not being like strength against their strength the whole time. Now, this could be easier for someone who started at a younger age and got older as they were doing jiu-jitsu. And now that they're in their older age, they have all this knowledge, so it's easier for them. This may not work for someone who comes in at an older age in their 40s, 50s, or 60s and starts jiu-jitsu. They start in a deficit, which means they will probably have to learn this defensive style of jiu-jitsu from the outset, which is necessarily not a bad thing. Now, even my professor, when I first was rolling with me, he was 10 or more years older than me. And I remember thinking, I could put my size and strength on him. And I remember him there's moments, I always felt like I was just crushing, just smashing him, but I could never finish him. And he was just absorbing, moving. I felt dominant, but I was never, as I grew to understand jiu-jitsu better, I realized I was never quite dominating him. I was just stronger and putting myself into like positions that I felt were strong positions. But regardless of me doing that, he would always find a way to sweep me or get his submission. And now that he's even older, I see him rolling, and it's definitely more of a defensive, flowy type of roll. He picks his spots and he finds them often. But that brings me to the final thing, is just knowledge. I tell my students all the time, it's not that you're bad at this, it's just that I know more than you right now. And so I'm able to find 5 different answers to a question you may only know 2 answers to. So if you are an older man, like middle age or older, I hope this helps. Listen to me, man. You could still be a threat. Do not accept, oh, I'm older, so I have to roll this way. Look, if you still have those attributes and you can kind of redline it, then you do that when you can, where you can, with the skills and attributes you still have. I tell my students all the time, I'm going to be doing this till the wheels fall off. And then at that point, man, I'm probably going to be biting and scratching, but I'm going to constantly bring the fight. It's just in how I do it may change as I lose certain attributes as I age. I say this all the time on my birthday. Aging is inevitable, but getting old is a choice. Trust me, guys, to stay where I'm at and to at least, because I'm still physically able to be aggressive towards these younger guys, for sure. But I have to do a lot of accessory things to be able to do that. I put in 2 or 3 times as much strength conditioning and additional work off the mats. But that's my choice. I just enjoy doing that kind of stuff. So it keeps me at a certain athletic level. I definitely do not lift like them. A lot of them, you know, strength, lift very heavy. And we talk about that all the time. And I don't lift heavy at all. But I have a couple students, you know, talk about strength, and they're definitely stronger than me. Pretty much all of them might be, but they're not stronger than me. And they realize that on the mats. The strength translates differently. So that's the last piece of advice I have for older men grappling is make sure that you're taking care of your work off the mats as well. Make sure you're getting some kind of strength conditioning in and keep it functional. But you can't just show up to jiu-jitsu class and only do jiu-jitsu and expect to be able to keep up with people half your age or even, you know, more than half your age. And you may have to do even more than they do with that accessory work. But if you love it, then it's worth it. Okay guys, so anyway, that's my take on old man jiu-jitsu. I hope it gave people some insight. You know, I do these videos to kind of just share my thoughts on things because, you know, there's a lot of technique videos out there, but I always like to kind of talk about the mindset a little bit. All right guys, so if you enjoy the video, man, please be sure to like and subscribe and stick around the channel, watch some other videos. You may find something you enjoy. We got a lot on this channel and we'd appreciate the love. And we will see you in the next video.